Hi, I'm Debbie from Floriani, Division of R&K Distributing, and I am here to show you how to make these cute little hand sanitizer pouches. Since this is our new best friend right now, I thought it would be fun to come up with something that we could make for our friends, and especially for those of you that may have someone in a retirement home, in an assisted living, a nursing home. I know this is everybody's best friend right now is hand sanitizer. So what I did is I made something for the standard size, and you could clip these onto the corner on the ring on your purse. You could even put this on your belt loop. You could even take and tie this onto a walker if you needed to. But how fun would this be to make a bunch of these and drop them off at a door at a nursing home? And don't you think that would brighten and cheer several people up to have something so bright and cheery and you to be so thoughtful? Now, these are super simple, very simple. Any sewing machine will be able to sew these, even if it only just does just a straight stitch and nothing else. They're very, very minimal to do. Take you 15 minutes to make it. So here's what we're going to need to get started. So you're going to need a piece of fabric that is 4 inches wide by 8 inches long. Now, I have fused the back of my fabric with an incredible product called Dreamweave Ultra. It is the best stuff ever. It enhances the thread count of your fabric. It gives it body, so it has a little more stability to it and not so limp. It's fusible, and I've just fused it to the back of the fabric. I've given it a good shot of steam. You need a second piece of fabric that is 4 inches wide by 13 inches long. And again, I put the Dreamweave Ultra on the back. Now, that Dreamweave Ultra will make all the difference in the world so your fabric doesn't look so flimsy. I've taken my 13-inch piece and I've just pressed it in half with my iron to give me that crease of where I need. Now, I've cut enough here for 2. You're also going to need a 3-inch piece of any kind of a ribbon, cross-grain ribbon. If you don't have ribbon, of course you can make it out of fabric. And then these are just some local little clasps that I've picked up at our local craft store. And this is what I'm going to hook this through and sew it in. This way it can hook onto my purse, my backpack, my belt loops. I can put a piece of ribbon through this if you're going to take it to a nursing home. Maybe you want to just put a piece of ribbon in and let them tie it onto their walkers. All right? Okay, so let's get started on putting this together. So as you can see, my Dreamweave is fused to the back. I've taken my 13-inch by 4 inches wide and pressed it in half. The first thing I'm going to do is take my pocket. That's the 4 inches wide by the 8 inches. I'm going to put right sides together, and I'm just using the width of my foot. So I'm just going to sew across the top of this. I'm going to back tack here so I make sure it catches it. And I am going to back tack the other side. So it doesn't really matter what the width of your foot is. Now I'm going to finger press this open. And I'm going to take this over to the iron and press it. But what I'm going to do first, after I finger press this, I'm going to turn this right side out, because remember this was wrong side together. So now I have it right side out. Now the cool thing about having this seam pressed open, I can take and fold this down so that my fold runs right across the top of one edge of my seam allowance. And that'll give me this cute little self-binding. So I'm going to take this to the iron and press it. So we've pressed both of our pockets. We've got 2 going here, just so you understand. All right, we're going to mark this before we do anything, because this pocket is going to fit right inside of here, right next to this fold. And along the fold is the fold of your fabric, and it's going to go right next to that fold. So we're going to put this up over the top of this and line this up. So before we pin this, and I'm just going to finger press this to kind of hold it in place for a second, we're going to do some markings. It's much easier to mark it now than after it's pinned. Now I'm using our awesome Quilter Select rulers. You guys, if you've never used these and you like to sew, this is an investment you're definitely going to want to make. It has an anti-slip on the back, and if you don't have to lay your arm down when you're cutting with a rotary cutter, you can literally just use 2 fingers. These are wonderful. What I'm going to use is the 45 mark on it to mark these. Now the first thing I'm going to do is mark right down the center. So this was 4 inches wide. Half of the 4 inches would be 2 inches. So I'm going to line this up with the 2-inch mark on my ruler, and I'm using what's called a heat friction pen, and I'm just going to draw a line. Now these heat friction pens, they go away with the heat of an iron. I always recommend that you test your fabric first because it will leave a white line on black and certain fabrics. Now that we've made our 2-inch line, the next line we want to do is we're going to come up 1.25 inches from this fold. So take your ruler again, put that fold on your 1.25 inch mark. There's my 1 inch, there's my 1/4 inch, and draw another line. Now we need to do our 2 angles on our corner. Now those angles are for our bottleneck to fit down inside. Because the great thing about this is we don't have to open this up every time to take the bottle out when we want to use it. We can just simply flip open the lid, squeeze it out into our hand, make sure you get the lid popped closed, and then you got it all over your hands and ready to go. And we don't have to open that pouch every time. All right, so what we'll do now is make our little corners for our bottleneck. Now I've done it for the standard, because this is pretty much the standard bottle, all right? So I'm going to use the 45 mark on my ruler. Now here's my 45. You have several markings on here. That 45 is going to come down, and I'm going to run that 45 so that it is along and running even with the side of my fabric. Now I'm going to bring this point. You can see each one of these corners, that point. I'm going to bring it to the 3/4 inch, and there's the 3/4 inch mark. There's my 45, so I want to make sure that I try to keep that fairly even. With that line that we drew, I know that I need to start right there, and here's my 45 mark. I'm going to draw my angle. I'll try to make this dark enough so you can see it, because I started from our 1.25 inch line. Now I need to go to the other side and do the same thing. So this time here is our 45 again. So I've got to turn that to make sure I have it the same distance. And I want that point to be on my 3/4 inch again. And I'm going to start on my line. That kind of gives you a starting point of where that needs to be. And there's my 3/4. I'll turn that just a little bit. My hand's probably in your way so you can't see. Okay, so now there's our 2 marks. This is going to be our sewing line. This was just a line to kind of give us an idea of where to start. Now we're going to go to the other side. We're going to use our 45 again on the other, because this is going to be our little curve here on our little flap. We're going to use the 45 again. This time we're going to come in 1 inch. So here's my 45 mark. And that point, make sure that they're even. When you don't have it pinned here, you have to be a little bit more careful. Okay, so here's my 45. I'm going to have the point come right to the inch this time. There's my inch mark on my 45. I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Here's my 45. Line it up with my fabric. Make sure my point is on the inch. Here's my 45 mark. And again, draw for my other corner. Perfect, we're ready to sew. Now that you've made those marks, just make sure your pocket is tucked right down inside of there, nice and smooth, that your edges are butted up together. And this would be a really good time to put some pins in to hold this into place. We do need to add our little strap. So we're going to take our little 3-inch piece of ribbon. We're going to run it through our little clasp We're going to put those two ends together. And we're going to put this inside right over the top of our pocket. Now, I had my ribbon come to just barely, maybe a ½ inch down from the top of my pocket. So I'm pinning that about a ½ inch down, and I want all my raw edges to be together. Now the sewing part of this is so simple, people. There's not much to it. But I'm going to leave an opening on the opposite side of where I put my clasp, because it's going to be much easier to turn it and close it on this other side. So I'm going to come down to the opposite side. There's my clasp. So I'm coming down where I don't have my ribbon, and I'm going to start at my corner. I am going to back tack, make sure that it's secure. I'm sewing right on the line that we drew, but I'm going to leave my needle down, and I'm going to turn and just sew the width of my foot back up. Now I'm going to leave an opening here. So I sewed up probably 1.5 inches from my corner. Then I'm going to leave an opening, so I'm going to come to about 1 inch, and I'm going to take my pin out. Never sew your pins. And start again and make sure I back tack good. Come to my marking, leave my needle down and turn, sew right on my line. Now you want to stop because you're going to use the width of your foot again to come across. Go to the line that you've drawn, sew down your line and stop for the width of your foot. This time we're going to sew all the way down and double check to make sure your ribbon's nice and even. Take your pin out. Same thing, we're going to sew across the line that we've drawn. And voila, that's all the sewing there is. How cool is that? Now we're ready to trim this. So we're just going to take and trim our corners. I'm leaving about 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to come back where I have those points and just trim off a little bit so that when it turns I can get a sharper point. Okay, now I'm going to use a really cool tool called the precision turning tool to turn this. This is the most awesome little guy. But when I turn this first, I'm going to get it started. I'm going to start with the end that doesn't have the pocket. It'll turn through much easier. The great thing about this precision turning tool is that I can get in that seam and punch out those seams so that when I go to press it, it will be nice and flat, and I don't have to sit there with a pen and try to poke out those seams. All right, so now take your tool and go inside, and there's one of the points. I'm just going to run the end of this, it's got a ball on it, right along that seam line. I'm going to come over to the other side and find my little point. I'm going to run it right along that seam line again. Come up and find my other point here. Run it across. See how great that is? Because it just punches that out. Makes it so much easier. All right, so what we're going to do now is take this over to the iron and press it, and then I'm just going to put a little piece of Stitch Perfection tape inside of there, which is a double stick tape, and I'm just going to sew it on my machine. Now I've done a couple of these that I've just sewn, just that opening closed, and if you use the same color of thread, you'll never even be able to see it. If you're really ambitious and like hand sewing on this one, you could hand stitch that closed. So let us get this pressed and we'll be right back. So I'm going to use my wonderful favorite tool. I love this stuff. This is called Stitch Perfection tape. And this is the most awesome stuff. I'm going to put a little piece in here to hold this together, and then I'm just going to sew that with my sewing machine. The great thing about this, you guys, you can put your zippers in with this. Like I said, it's double stick when you peel off this pressure sensitive paper, and it's water soluble. So anytime you put on any kind of ribbons or lace or trim of any kind, put this on the back and it just works fantastic. You don't even have to pin it into place. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to peel off the protective paper. So I'm going to put this double stick tape right inside here on the seam that we pressed, and then I can take and fold this and it's going to hold it all into place for me. Then I don't have to worry about pinning it. Hold it right together. Isn't that awesome? It's the greatest stuff ever. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to sew right along here. If you felt really ambitious, you could do this by hand. I guess I'm not feeling that ambitious. I have this motto in life that if it can't be done on the sewing machine, it doesn't need to be done. So I like to do everything I possibly can on the sewing machine. Another tool I love is our stiletto. I could not sew without it because I can take and run that to make sure it's in there nice and flat. And if I used thread that was exactly the same color, I don't think you would ever even see this. I mean, this is so awesome. Look how easy these are, and we really are done. All we're going to do now is put a snap on. Now, you guys, I just got these cool, colorful snaps. I think they're so fun. And look at all the different colors. To me, it's just like bright and cheery whenever I look at those. Now, I've marked where I want this to go. So I have a mark right here. I wanted my one snap. My other one's going to go right here. All right, so I've marked it with my Heat Friction pen. So I'm going to take the one snap, I'm going to poke it through on my mark. Make sure I'm on my mark. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to push this down. My fingernail here. Get that through. Then I'm going to put the female side on. And then this is so select. These are so easy. And lay that on here. And squeeze. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side. This time I've got to go up inside and get that little pointy thing on my mark. And then we are done. These are just so easy to do, you guys. I was thinking how fun it would be for my grandbabies to do these. I think they would love it. And how fun would it be to show up with a bunch of these made and just be able to leave them at the door of the nursing home or a retirement center, and just to realize how happy they would be to have bright and cheery fabric. All right, here's our little bottle. Here's our little snap. And hola, aren't we cute? We're so done. Now there's one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and sew a straight stitch right along this edge so that my little loopy thing doesn't slide all around. But other than that, I'm going to move my needle over to the right position and just do a straight stitch along there to kind of hold that more secure. And we're all done. Aren't these so adorable? How fun these are. I hope you make tons and make somebody just super happy, all right? Thanks, you guys. Enjoy.